Hello, friends, and welcome to Your Daily Detroit. It is Tuesday, July 19th, 2022. I'm coming to you from a porch on the east side of Detroit. I'm Jer and across the table from me is Fletcher Sharp. How are you?
It's been a trying weekend. I'm sure it's been trying for everybody, the least of which Detroit City FC supporters.
I mean, look, our backup studio is unavailable for 2 weeks, so we are literally doing this al fresco. Out on the porch, out on the balcony. It has been a tough one, though, for fans. Devin Amoo-Mensah is the first place I want to start. That was a heartbreaking moment. I think, frankly, we're going to look back, and it's some ways a heartbreaking moment in LaRouche history.
Yeah, of all the players they couldn't afford to miss on the defensive back line, Stephen Carroll being out was not great, but manageable. Matty Lewis being out is not great but manageable. I know people are going to say Devin Amoo-Mensah being out is not great but manageable, but in my opinion, he's the biggest loss because of all the center backs who play mainly center back, not including Michael Bryan, who can switch between the two. He's the most forward-thinking. He's the most dynamic in terms of helping to split defenses with passes from the back. He's the most willing to get back there and get in a challenge, and honestly, of all of them, he's the quickest, so he's the least likely to get turned when they face teams like Las Vegas Lights, with very quick wing attackers. So losing him for a full season is going to be rough. ACL injuries are hard to come back from, but if there's anyone on that roster who I could pick, he'd be one of the first few because I know he's determined to try to get back at the same level he was when he left.
So as you understand it, what happened? What is his injury?
He tore his ACL, and honestly, with non-contact injuries, as his kind of was, you worry about that because typically, at least if there's contact, you can say, all right, well, something happened where this guy got kicked or this guy got shoved or something of the sort. But with him, it was he made a play, he fell awkwardly, and that's usually your body saying, hey, man, you've done a lot. Now it's time to sit down. And if you won't sit down, I'm going to make you sit down. So it's unfortunate that it was an ACL tear for Devin. At least, I hate to look for silver lining, at least it's not an Achilles. An Achilles, he would be a different player when he comes back. There's at least a decent chance he can come back and still be as effective, if not more.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things with Devin is that his style of play and his step had been so huge. In fact, I'd even heard that, there were international teams starting to look at him saying, hey, has he got something that we want to get a hold of?
It stinks for his development, but if you're a fan of the team, in a way, it's kind of good because it keeps him here, rehabbing, getting better. You get to see how the team will react without one of their better players, who for me was the MVP of the season so far. So yeah, it stinks, but there are some good things to look forward to.
For sure. How did that show up in that 0-0 tie? And I mean, look, there are a lot of people who say a point on the road is a point on the road, but I mean, when it's against Monterey Bay, the bottom of the Western Conference, that's a team that we should have beat.
Devin's absence was really more felt, I guess, offensively, just in terms of bringing the ball forward, but they didn't lose because of the center backs. They lost because they couldn't put the ball in the net, and I'm not sure what it is now. Monterey Bay has been better since the beginning of the season. I know before they were just getting beat in every single week. Now they're riding a 5-6 game successive streak of playing well, getting a point if need be, or maybe even getting a win. So them pulling this off isn't as surprising if you watch them, but looking at their record, you still should get some points. Detroit had some chances to score, coming late with a chance that Pato happened to just tip over the net. It's the same story at this point. They've gone 7 games, scored 5 goals. You got to find somebody to put the ball in the net. And whether that means looking elsewhere, or whether that means putting pressure on your roster, whether that means suiting up yourself and just hopping in there and doing it, someone's got to put the ball in the net because you can't beat good teams without putting the ball in the net. You tie bad teams, but you will lose to good teams when you don't put the ball in the net.
In a recent Detroit News article, they mentioned that Trevor James is going to be calling around and looking to loan and whatever. Do you think that that's a reasonable thing? Do you think that the pocketbook might finally open and kind of fill in this thing? Or are we where we're at?
I mean, if you're looking for a loan, it's a cheaper option. You're splitting payment with another team. You're paying for part of the season, especially now that the season's halfway over, as opposed to outright buying where you're paying the full weight. A loan is a mixed bag. You're going to get whatever you get. Typically get a player that doesn't really fit into the team's structure right now. Like Carl Ouimet works for Detroit City, but for Indy 11, for some odd reason, he did not work, so they were able to let him go. You're going to get a player who hasn't played much, has something to prove. You're not going to go on loan and get Lionel Messi. He matters to his team. Not to say these players on loan don't matter, but they don't fit into the structure right now. So you're going to get a player who you might not see the best number returns on their stats, and hopefully that they fit in really well. So I think it's a smarter way to go. At this point, anything needs to go, because while I said on Twitter a few times, I think Detroit's playoff spot is sewn up, not because they're good, but because everyone under them is very bad. And it's very hard for me to see Detroit dropping out of this top 7 spots with only 7 good teams in their division. But to see them produce in the playoffs, I am worried, because they're not scoring goals at a rate that I think is acceptable for this roster.
Are we truly paying for keeping such a short bench with injuries?
Yeah, we're not paying as bad as someone like Colorado Springs, who literally fielded 1 sub yesterday, but it's not looking well. And we're at a point where if a player gets hurt, now we're scrambling with who goes here next, who goes where. We were at a point where we had to call up an academy player to just sit on the bench, which hopefully won't happen next year or the years prior, when the finances expand a little bit and maybe there's a chance to sign some new players.
Right. And do we have any understanding on why those finances are so tight?
Honestly, they're still paying NISA for getting out of the league. Some sponsorship snafus, which we've touched on earlier. And yeah, I think coming in as a new team, you think you need X amount of money, and it turns out you need Y amount of money. And now you're how do we do what we can to make that difference a little bit less noticeable?
All right, looking ahead to New Mexico United, this is a team that, even if you look at the standings, it feels like we're about to go face the mirror of ourselves.
Yeah, New Mexico runs a similar formation as Detroit. Detroit runs a 3-4-3. New Mexico runs basically a 3-4-3, more of a 3-5-2. Similar kind of functioning, though. Detroit's record, 9 wins, 7 draws, 4 losses. New Mexico's record, 9 wins, 7 draws, 3 losses. Same amount of points. Very similar in all the stats. They've scored 29 goals, given up 16. Detroit scored 28, giving up 18. They're literally the same exact team. Their leading goal scorer is Justin Portillo, a center defensive mid, who has 6 goals, 5 via penalty kick, which sounds a lot like Maxey last year in NISA. So it's a very, very similar team. They want to get in there. They want to get the ball up the field. They want to press a little bit. They want to control. It's going to be very much like watching 2 twins punch each other in the face at the same time. So hopefully the twin in maroon hits a little bit harder and knocks him over. I see this one being a draw, however. I'm sure the players are upset. I'm sure they're a little bit embarrassed tying to Monterey Bay, who I'll admit I kind of expected a cakewalk. A lot of people did. I've given them the respect they deserve, especially led by a captain like Hugh Roberts, who got his team to do what he needed it to do. But I see this one being a draw just because it's equal footing, equal firepower, and I don't really see anyone breaking through, either 0-0 or 1-1.
Yeah, right now, for when it comes to my predictions, I'm kind of shook because I don't even feel like this is the same team. They're just going to have to reorganize.
It's less of not being the same team. These are mistakes that they would be allowed to do in NISA, because in NISA they were just better. Eventually they'd put enough pressure where someone would make a bad foul in the box and they'd get bailed up on a penalty kick, or they would just have the strength to just overwhelm someone until they make mistakes. The USL Championship, you have people who are professionals and real professionals, no disrespect to NISA, but they've also come out and that's been more of a half pro, half college league. You have people who are understanding the pressure of playing at a higher level. You will not force them into making mistakes. They will make a mistake on their own accord, not because you put pressure on them. So you don't see many penalty kicks. I think Detroit's only had 1 this entire season.
I was going to mention about that, yeah.
Yeah, you're seeing teams understand that we have to not give them a footing to get ahead of us. If we don't give them a footing to get ahead of us, we'll be fine. A lot of teams in NISA struggled with that, and as a result, Detroit was able to get ahead and play the style where they don't really have to attack you because you're going to give them the ball. Whereas now, it's Detroit has to go and take the ball. In some games, they can do that. In some games, they cannot. And this is one of the games, unfortunately, I don't see it happening. I don't see them losing, obviously, but I do see it getting a little bit rough on this one going forward.
Well, that will be at Keyworth on Saturday evening. I do want to highlight that I-94 is actually going to be closed for the next week, and that's going to be important for people trying to get to the match. It's closed for a large distance because they're going to be putting in and replacing a bridge. And so make sure you think about that when you're heading down to the stadium this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. We want people to get there on time, but also safely. So I know I need to know that because I'll definitely forget and get caught in 94 heading that way. Should be a good match this Saturday. Hopefully I'm wrong. I know people like to remind me when I am wrong. If it happens here, I'll happily accept it, but I don't see myself being wrong right here.
Well, Fletcher Sharp, good to see you.
Likewise.
And I'm Jer Stays. Just a reminder, we're going to be doing 2 episodes of the podcast this week. We've just got a bunch of stuff that we've got to handle, do a little bit of a summer slowdown for a week. So you'll hear me next with Engineer Randy. We're going to be previewing some of the great new places that have opened up around town, including the fact that we got a chance to get into the opening of Pizza Cat in downtown Detroit. All right, with that, thank you so much for listening. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.